I spent half of my life as a Muslim, and I spent many years living in the Muslim world. And I know the kinds of conversations that are happening right now all over the world in Muslim households. There are the Muslims who are saying to themselves or saying to their loved ones, Salman Rushdie deserved this. I hope he dies. And even more pathetic than that are the Muslims who just say things like, well, what did he expect was going to happen? What did he expect was going to happen to him when he made fun of Islam, when he said blasphemous things? And what a truly pathetic thing that is to say. Because it's like saying, well, this is what the world is like, even though it's messed up and we don't agree with it, but you pay the consequences. It's just accepting this toxic, horrid status quo. I'm filming this video with a heavy heart, the day after the brutal attack of novelist Salman Rushdie. Many of you watching this video probably already know the details of what happened, but in case you don't, here's a quick recap. Yesterday on Friday, August the 12th, Salman Rushdie was appearing at an event in Western New York State where he was going to talk about the importance of offering asylum to writers and other artists in exile. As Rushdie was being introduced, a man wearing a black mask ran onto the stage and attacked both Rushdie and the person interviewing him. Rushdie was stabbed at least once in the neck and once in the abdomen. After the assailant was apprehended, Rushdie was airlifted to a nearby hospital. He is currently on a ventilator and unable to speak. His agent has said that Rushdie will likely lose one eye and that he also suffered some nerve damage in his arm and that his liver was also damaged in the attack. So the next question becomes, why did this happen? Why would someone want to brutally attack a 75-year-old novelist, someone who just writes books? To give you some more background, in 1988, Salman Rushdie, who was born to a non-practicing Muslim family and is an atheist himself, wrote a novel called The Satanic Verses. The Satanic Verses explores the immigrant experience and the clashes between Eastern and Western cultures. And the book also parodies Islam. Those aspects of the book offended many Muslims who considered the book to be blasphemous. The Satanic Verses was banned in many countries, and its publication led to riots across the world. And in 1989, Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khomeini, issued a fatwa, which was a legal order that's issued by a religious leader, calling for Salman Rushdie's death. At the same time, there were many other Muslims who were calling for Salman Rushdie's death, who were burning his book. A Japanese translator of the book was stabbed to death. An Italian translator was also stabbed, but thankfully survived. And the Norwegian publisher of the book was shot, but also thankfully survived. Salman Rushdie himself went into hiding for almost 10 years, constantly surrounded by bodyguards and using fake names wherever he went. And even though Khomeini died the same year that he issued the fatwa, Rushdie has lived with the threat of this fatwa hanging over his head ever since. While in hiding and dealing with the repercussions of these death threats and the fatwa against him, Rushdie has become a vocal advocate for freedom of expression, and a very important one who inspired me and countless other ex-Muslims to speak out against Islam. So this brings us back to the question, why did this attack happen? The suspect has been identified and is in custody, and his name has been published in the media, but I'm not going to mention it here because I don't want to give this individual any more attention than they've already received. His exact motives are still unknown, but it's becoming increasingly clear that his attack had something to do with that fatwa that was issued against Rushdie's life. The assailant was born in the US to Lebanese parents, and authorities believe that the attack was motivated by fundamentalist extremism. The Daily Beast news publication interviewed a former high school classmate of the assailant who remembered that he was a devout Muslim. He also recalled that one of the few things that he remembered talking about with the assailant was the importance of kindness. So who knows what happened to this individual since then? I'm sure we're going to get more information about what motivated this assailant and how this attack was allowed to happen in the first place. But right now, I just want to talk about the tragedy of this attack. How do we get to this point where we're living in a world where a novelist, someone who just writes books, who just writes words could be brutally attacked like this. We have so many problems in the world right now that are threatening our entire way of life. Climate change, war, an ongoing pandemic. This is a time when we should be uniting to address these challenges. And isn't it so sad that in 2022, a man is being attacked for the words he's written and for nothing else? So what was it about the words this man wrote that galvanized so many Muslims to call for his death, to threaten him? What did he do that was so bad? Well, he offended Muslims. Now, many Muslims are condemning this attack, which is a good thing, but the problem still remains of where this violence came from. Many Muslims will say that Islam is a religion of peace, that this attack was the act of a deranged individual, and this has nothing to do with true Islam. Now, they may very well be right that this was the act of one deranged individual, but where did the incentive to attack Rushdie come from? Well, it came from Islam. Where did the anger and the rage and the death threats and the fatwa against Rushdie come from? It came from Islam. It came from the culture that Islam creates, where the reverence of the Prophet Muhammad and of God himself is so great that saying anything that is critical of them induces outrage and violence. When I first started talking about why I left Islam on social media, and when I spoke out against Islam and its problems, I did it anonymously. In the early days, I didn't even show my face, but I started doing these videos so I could reach more people, so I could explain what the dangers and perils of Islam are. And I knew that it came with a risk, even though I'm doing it anonymously, because there were the stories about people like Salman Rushdie and the death threats and the fatwa against him. There are so many ex-Muslims and even Muslims who have problems with Islam who are afraid to speak out because they know the risks. And 33 years after that fatwa, Salman Rushdie is paying a very heavy price for taking those risks. And it's a heavy price I can't imagine paying myself. This is what Muslim extremists and fundamentalists do. They use fear and violence to scare us into silence, to silence any kind of criticism or dissent about the religion. And I'm worried that this attack on Salman Rushdie will silence legitimate criticism of Islam even more than it's already silenced. There's so many people out there who are afraid to speak out. But we can't let them win. We can't let the people who use violence and fear dictate what we can and can't talk about. Ask yourself this question. Could Salman Rushdie have written and published the satanic verses today as it is written? I don't think so. People are afraid, and I understand that fear. Can you imagine being attacked as brutally as Salman Rushdie was attacked for simply saying words, for writing them? Can you imagine being unable to speak, being on a ventilator, potentially losing an eye, dealing with liver damage, just for words? And I know I describe this as the actions of extremists and fundamentalists, but beyond the fundamentalists and extremists who would do violent things to people who speak out against Islam, there are the many more moderate Muslims who enable these kinds of actions. I spent half of my life as a Muslim, and I spent many years living in the Muslim world. And I know the kinds of conversations that are happening right now all over the world in Muslim households. There are the Muslims who are saying to themselves or saying to their loved ones, Salman Rushdie deserved this. I hope he dies. And even more pathetic than that are the Muslims who just say things like, well, what did he expect was going to happen? What did he expect was going to happen to him when he made fun of Islam, when he said blasphemous things? And what a truly pathetic thing that is to say. Because it's like saying, well, this is what the world is like, even though it's messed up and we don't agree with it, but you pay the consequences. It's just accepting this toxic, horrid status quo. And that's why things in Islam don't really change. And that's why its toxic views on the meaning of life, on homosexuality, on the treatment of women, on the treatment of apostates, of ex-Muslims, remains the same. That's why there's no incentive to change it, because it's enabled by the community as a whole. Because they simply say, when someone speaks out against Islam and gets harmed for it, well, what did he expect? But the violence of Muslims against atheists and ex-Muslims who make legitimate criticisms of Islam won't work. Because what they're doing is bringing even more attention to the things that ex-Muslims and atheists are talking about. We can't let them win by being afraid to say anything negative about Islam. If anything, we should amplify our voices. Now, if you haven't read the Satanic Verses, this book right here, then I recommend that you go out and buy and read it and share it, just to see what all the fuss is about, and then decide for yourself if someone deserves to die because of this book. And if you're a Muslim reading the Satanic Verses, you might not like it and you might be offended by it. But that's where it should end. The Satanic Verses is a powerful exploration of many themes that connect deeply with Muslims and non-Muslims alike. It's an exploration of taboos that should be broken, that should be explored, because we have to figure out why these things are taboos in the first place. In that sense, we can't allow artistic expression to be silenced just because people will be offended by what the artist says. So again, please read the Satanic Verses. Share it with friends and loved ones. Let them know what happened to Salman Rushdie, and ask them the question, did he deserve this? And why did this happen? Now, I have to be honest, I'm a little bit more afraid to be doing this channel, to be speaking out against Islam than I was just 2 days ago. But I can't stop, and I won't stop. We can't let what happened to Salman Rushdie to be in vain. This has to be something that galvanizes us to speak out in defense of the freedom of expression, in defense of being able to just criticize a religion. And I hope you can also all join me in wishing a speedy recovery for Salman Rushdie. It's just unthinkable that something like this could happen. And my hope is, cynic as I am, that something like this doesn't happen again. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back with another video soon.